the far reaches of our world is a dangerous endeavor. As noble of a calling the pursuit of knowledge and balance may be, all those who join the Monster Hunters Guild must continuously remind themselves that they walk a path on razor's edge. One risk too many, one curiosity too reckless, one day too unlucky, and they too could end up a lonely corpse upon a distant waste, an unread obituary carved into the soil itself. While the Guild's exploits can often sound like wondrous tales of bravery and exploration, any operation is only ever a hair's breadth away from disaster. Historically, one of the most significant examples of this was the tragedy of the Wyvern Graveyard Expedition. One of the organizations that works alongside the Hunters Guild are the Royal Paleontology Scriveners of Shrade. They are the foremost research organization in matters of monster ecology, and have made countless scientific breakthroughs by taking the scattered observations of guild hunters and organizing them into an empirical framework of the natural world. One of their most ambitious ongoing projects is the creation of a unified monster phylogeny, an evolutionary tree of life that maps out how monster species have evolved in relation to and out of each other. This is an incredibly difficult task and requires large amounts of samples, especially bones, fresh and fossilized alike. It was this need for bone fossils that catalyzed an investigation into an old rumor. Far away from any civilization lies a frozen wasteland simply known as the Tundra. While people rarely venture into this region, it is a place that has long been the topic of many myths and tales. One such myth was that of the Wyvern Graveyard, an eerie site where wyverns of all kinds congregate to die, leaving behind only their frozen skeletons. Why they would do this, and where exactly in the tundra this place might be, varies between each retelling, but it has long been accepted within folklore that the Wyvern Graveyard exists somewhere in these frostlands. As the guild ramped up its research efforts in nearby ecosystems, it was decided that they'd organize an expedition into the tundra to find where this graveyard might be. Precautions were taken in the form of pre-surveys that confirmed the presence of baggy in the area, which were quickly dispatched by guild hunters. And so, the Wyvern Graveyard expedition departed, eager to come back with the samples that would provide vital data for the monster phylogeny. Instead, most of them did not come back at all. Others came back in multiple separate bags. But the unluckiest ones returned in one piece, alive, but forever changed. Sunken eyes, tattered skins, frozen fingers and toes, these men and women had been broken. Broken, not by the cold, but by something else. It took time to get any useful information out of the traumatized survivors, but across multiple reports, one fact emerged. The expedition had been going smoothly, and they had even found a bone-filled spot that seemed to match the descriptions of the Wyvern Graveyard. But soon after arriving, they had been attacked by something the witnesses simply called a White Knight, which had gone on to massacre most of the expedition. Examinations of the deceased yielded very little. They looked as if sliced apart by an enormous blade, or had their chests brutally pierced by some kind of large spear or tip. Assuming this to be the work of an as of yet undiscovered monster species, the Hunters Guild mobilized a proper hunting squadron to venture into the tundra and find this so-called knight. It took a great deal of preparation and guts, but in the end, the team was able to sight, identify, and repel the creature in question. It was determined to be a flying wyvern, and was given the name Barioth. Covered in a large white armor shell, sporadically interrupted by tufts of fur, this large wyvern species prowls the icy regions of our world in search of prey. In most regions they inhabit, Barioth hold the position of apex predator due to their many marvelous adaptations. Their white shell allows them to blend into their snowy environments and makes them nearly invisible during any amount of snowfall. It is likely this characteristic that allowed them to elude discovery for so long, in fact. Barioth are ambush predators that rely on this stealth, as they prefer to end a hunt with a single strike. To do so, they require a solid grip on the snow and ice, which is where one of their most characteristic features comes into play. All across the body, Barioth possess short spikes that jut out in multiple directions, even being present at the bottom of their feet. These spikes serve to dig into the icy soil and prevent the heavy wyvern from sliding involuntarily. By strategically letting these spikes fortify its gait, a Barioth can walk and run across icy surfaces with ease. The spikes are especially prevalent on the front limbs, which seem to serve as brakes to perform sudden stops and tight turns on even the most treacherous terrain. Barioth spikes are a true marvel of nature, for even though they look short and unremarkable, they are extremely strong, so much so that the wyvern can even use them to briefly cling to walls while climbing. And despite this strength, these spikes are not actually made of bone. They are in fact not connected to the skeleton at all. Barioth spikes seem to instead be the result of external armor shells undergoing extreme keratinization, having their shape modified into these pointed osteoderms. Evidence also suggests that there is more to them still. It has been observed that Barioth can change the angle and orientation of their spikes to a limited degree, implying some manner of specialized musculature. Using their white camouflage and spiked bodies, Barioth calmly and invisibly stalk the Frostlands, looking for anything they can feed on. These monsters stake out large territories in which they hunt regularly. Curiously, Barioth hunt through sight, a sense that is often less than reliable in a world of snowstorms and sun glares reflecting off the icy ground. This is only possible due to the specialized way that Barioth use their eyes. During the day and in clear weather conditions, the wyvern's icy blue eyes are always half closed, giving the monster a distinct squinting expression. This allows it to minimize the effect of the sun glare on its vision, enabling it to see without issue. When night falls or a storm blots out the sun, however, Barioth open their eyes fully, taking in as much light as they can to retain accurate vision even in low light conditions. Once fully opened, a Barioth's eyes reflect a different range of light, and thus appear to change color, taking on a yellow or orange glow instead. Armed with superior mobility and vision, Barioth are extremely powerful predators in the icy tundra, where they prey primarily on popo. They are, however, not opposed to attacking larger monsters, and will adapt their hunting strategy depending on the size and defensive traits of their prey. All Barioth hunts do, however, start the same. A lone Barioth spots some kind of prey animal from afar, and begins moving towards it unseen. It must get within range to initiate its assault. The required distance is actually quite generous due to this species' unique body build. As flying wyverns, Barioth possess large wings on their front legs. They are, however, also close relatives of the Nargacuga, with both belonging to the winged four-leg wyvern superfamily, a taxon of flying wyverns that walk on all fours, like certain ancient ancestor wyverns did in the distant past. Of all the members of this group, Barioth is the species that has most retained its ability to fly, as they are capable of staying in the air reliably. The aerial skills of a Barioth are particularly notable compared to its close relative, the Nargacuga, which is rarely seen flying at all. This flying prowess seems to be the result of a specialized joint in the outer wing bone of the Barioth, which can be used to extend and fold the wing membrane on command. It is important not to overstate this species' aerial mobility, however. Barioth notably struggle with flapping their wings for long periods of time, and cannot match true masters of flight such as the Rathalos. But what these wings can do is allow their bearers to glide through the air with astonishing speed and stability. This allows Barioth to pounce on prey from surprising distances, minimizing the possibility of being detected before successfully reaching their target. Once a Barioth pounces, several things can happen. If the prey is small, then the Barioth will simply attempt to land on top of it and crush it to death, either with sheer force or through the impact of its deadly wing claws. It will then use those same wing claws to pin the victim to the ground and determine if it is still alive. If the prey is larger, however, like some kind of wyvern or beast, then a Barioth will choose to employ its signature weapon, its pair of massive amber tusks. These enormous orange teeth are the pride of the Barioth, jutting out from the mouth like two deadly swords. That comparison is more literal than one might think. Unlike tusks seen in other species, Barioth tusks are not merely long cones with a pointed tip. Instead, they are much closer to double-edged knives. The anterior edge is serrated, while the posterior edge is razor-sharp. This allows them to be used for shredding and slashing, as well as stabbing. Not only are Barioth tusks versatile in their lethality, they are also extremely durable. Their distinct color stems from a coating of iron that is deposited on them as the wyvern ages, derived from its diet. This coating enhances the tusk's already impressive resilience and makes them even more destructive. These adaptations might seem extreme, but the Barioth needs them. In the tundra, most prey animals sport thick fur and even thicker layers of fat, and anyone looking to land a killing blow must be ready to shear through those defenses reliably. And that is precisely what the Barioth's tusks exist to do. The amber flash of a Barioth's tusks is often what bookends a hunt, as it plunges deep into a restrained victim and ends their life in a single strike. A pounce, a pin, and a bite. That is the ideal scenario for this predator. But like all hunting strategies, the Barioth's plan A is not a guaranteed success. Prey might avoid the pounce, wriggle free from the pin, or even dodge the bite last second. If this occurs, the Barioth initiates Plan B. Using its agility, the wyvern maneuvers around its victim and begins assaulting it from all sides with physical attacks. The large wing arms and claws are used to brutally assault the target, and body slams and checks weaponize the Barioth's heavy body. As the battle rages on, the Barioth's fury grows, visible by the blood that floods its face, adding a red color to their glowing eyes. But the goal of Plan B is not brute force. As it fights, the Barioth is continuously observing its adversary for the right opening, the moment it is waiting for. And once the wyvern spots that very opportunity, it unleashes its trump card. Like many flying wyverns, Barioth possess an elemental organ that allows them to harness special breath abilities. In its case, the Barioth wields a frost sac that produces and stores a freezing liquid within its body. When an opening presents itself, the Barioth stimulates its frost sac, which does not simply release its contents, but instead begins pumping like a heart. The freezing liquid is catapulted through a network of spiraling pathways, gaining momentum and spin as it is cycled through this system. During this acceleration phase, the liquid is also shot through the wyvern's airways to mix with its cold breath and also be additionally accelerated by the pulmonary system. When the liquid reaches critical velocity, it is routed to the throat, from where the Barioth spits it at its opponent. Immediately upon exiting the body and encountering the frigid Arctic temperatures, the liquid freezes solid and turns into an icy projectile. This frost chunk retains the speed and spin that it gained in liquid form, making it not only extremely fast, but in addition causing a peculiar effect upon impact. When this projectile shatters, the stored momentum and spin causes its fragments to fly upwards in a spiral, effectively producing a small whirlwind of cold winds and ice particles. Any creature caught in this wind will find itself immobilized and incapacitated, as the ice and cool currents rapidly sap its body heat. While a Barioth's whirlwinds are very localized and short-lived, it has been suggested that repeated use of this ability could trigger larger storms in the area, but that hypothesis is far from confirmed as of now. Plan B is thus to use this ice cyclone breath to incapacitate prey. The breath projectile of a Barioth is rarely strong enough to outright kill a victim immediately, so the true purpose is to slow them down and immobilize them such that the Barioth can attempt another lethal bite with its tusks. The ice breath is not even the only way for the Barioth to do this either. If an opponent does not present a solid opening for a cyclone attack, the Barioth will instead swing its tail at them. The tail of a Barioth has many of its spikes on the sides, most notably on the forked tail tip. These spikes serve to carve up the icy soil as the monster swings its tail, throwing snow and sleet into the air in the process. So even if the mighty tail swing does not directly connect with an enemy, the resulting spray of cold material can still serve to slow them down. While swinging one's tail at an adversary is quite risky, as they might grab or injure it, the Barioth does not worry itself over that. Specialized hard plating on the tail makes it extremely difficult to meaningfully harm it, further increasing its effectiveness as a weapon. Between the initial pounce and the cyclone breath, Barioth are generally extremely successful predators. And even if both Plan A and B fail to secure the kill, the wyvern still has an emergency strategy, one that both initial plans already aid in setting up. If the Barioth realizes that it cannot land a decisive hit, it will instead pivot to a battle of attrition. Slashing enemies with its claws, grazing them with its spikes, landing non-lethal hits with its tusks. The Barioth aims to create as many wounds as possible to kill its enemy via blood loss. Many times, even if prey survives the first two strategies, it is already left wounded and hurt such that it will expire soon after regardless. Either way, once the target falls to one of these three methods, the Barioth begins its feast. Out in the frigid waste, it is vital to be as efficient as possible, and that also applies to nutrition. A predator that has to expend energy hunting cannot afford to waste further energy eating parts of the kill that do not replenish it enough. Due to this, Barioth have the peculiar habit of first eating the nutritious organs of their victims: hearts, lungs, stomachs, and more. These parts are the most energy rich, and so must be secured first and foremost. A Barioth will of course not shun the rest of the meal once the organs are dealt with. This is where the characteristic blade edges of the tusks come into play. The sharp posterior edge slices through meat, while the serrated anterior edge saws through bone. This way, a Barioth has easy access to the organs and can additionally carve up all parts of the body into smaller, more ingestible chunks. A multi-tiered hunting strategy and an efficiency-oriented menu plan. Such behaviors are just some of the reasons that Barioth are considered cunning and intelligent monsters. Very much worth staying away from. Their intelligence and power makes Barioth quite dangerous, which is why civilians at least can breathe a sigh of relief in knowing that they are also rather rare. Barioth are only seen rarely, and generally stick to remote areas humans are unlikely to pass through. These wyvern are also solitary for most of their lives, with males and females living far apart in separate territories. This, however, changes during the breeding season. Male Barioth begin seeking out the females and intruding into their territories, where they parade themselves around in a bid to attract their potential mate's attention. Key to this courtship are the tusks. Their shape and size are what will determine if the male can successfully court the female. He must be vigilant though. Female Barioth are stronger and more aggressive than the males, and can easily overpower them. If a male wastes a female Barioth's time with an unimpressive display, she will brutally chase him out of her territory, a confrontation that can leave the male with notable injuries. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. The males still try, and, as it must, nature eventually takes its course. After mating has occurred, the now fertilized females will continue hunting for some time, until their pregnancy becomes too much of a hindrance to do so. When it's time to hunker down for the final stretch, female Barioth build nests in the depths of the tundra, often choosing icy caves in remote mountain ranges as their nurseries. These places are extremely hard to reach, so research on Barioth nursing has been slow. Some insights have nonetheless been gained. As they sit in their caves, pregnant Barioth try to minimize their body's exposure to the cold. They do so by crouching down and contracting their bodies, trying to retain as much heat as possible. Not long after, they give birth to a litter of 1 to 3 Barioth cubs, which spend their youth with each other and their mother. Barioth cubs are born entirely covered in fluffy fur, displaying none of the hard armor shells seen in adults. It is believed that these juveniles have weaker thermoregulatory functions due to their youth, and that their fur is an adaptation to keep them warm until their bodies mature. As they age, most of the fur is eventually replaced by the armor shell, with some tufts remaining into adulthood. Another physiological difference in cubs is that their tusks are present but pale in color. The amber color of Barioth tusks is derived from the wyvern's ingestion of iron through its diet, so cubs start out without any iron in their tusks, thus lacking the characteristic orange hue. In the years since their discovery, Barioth have taken on a fierce and powerful reputation among the general populace. Their rarity, alongside the grisly reports of encounters with them, has stimulated the morbid imaginations of the people all around the world. In some regions, the Barioth is considered a symbol of power, and many noble families commission the retrieval of Barioth fur in order to display it as a show of political and social status. Research on the species, meanwhile, has progressed steadily, additionally aided by the fact that a Barioth population was also discovered to be living in the New World's hinterlands. New World Barioth closely resemble Old World individuals, with a few key differences. Barioth found in the hinterlands are notably more athletic, performing extraordinary feats of agility that are unseen in Old World populations. This might be related to the second major difference, which is found in the wing anatomy. While Old World Barioth had 3 bones in their wings, 1 outer folding bone and 2 supporting bones, New World specimens only possess the outer bone. Beyond mere physical comparisons, the discovery of New World Barioth was also significant, as it allowed for further observations of the wyvern in a region besides the tundra. Here, Barioth behave much the same, preying on the vast ecosystem of the hinterlands as a top predator. But just like the tundra was rumored to hide the wyvern graveyard within its territory, so too is there a secret believed to be hidden somewhere in the hinterlands. Observations on monsters found in the Hoarfrost Reach repeatedly found adaptations and markings that suggested much colder temperatures and harsher conditions than even those found in the Reach. This had led to the theory that deeper within the hinterlands lies a wasteland of unimaginable adversity, where temperatures drop even lower and resources are even more scarce. The strongest evidence of this claim was provided by the discovery of a special kind of Barioth. As research in the region progressed, hunters sometimes returned with troubling reports. From the far north, an unusual Barioth had slinked into the region, whose ice-cold gaze had terrified even the most seasoned hunters of the New World. Investigations later confirmed this to be a variant of Barioth, aptly nicknamed Frostfang Barioth. Frostfangs resemble regular Barioth, but are covered in layers of frost and have even whiter shells. Their fur is also much longer and present in more areas, giving them a scraggly look. Most notable is the beard-like mane that hangs from the neck of the wyvern. Additionally, the tusks of a Frostfang Barioth are a deep blue in color and are also coated in jagged icicles. Following such basic external descriptions, the guild was soon able to piece together other aspects of this monster. Like all variants, this is not a separate species, but instead a regular Barioth that has undergone various changes across its individual life. Specifically, Frostfang Barioth have been found to be elderly individuals that have survived for a long time. In their long lives, they have adapted to unspeakably harsh conditions over and over again. For whatever reason, they appear to be entirely endemic to the hinterlands, as no such individuals have ever been found in the Old World. It is thus believed that the conditions necessary for a Barioth to become a Frostfang are only found in the yet unexplored wastelands of the New World's hinterlands. It is vital to understand that these elders are not weak or frail in the slightest. The fact that they have survived this long speaks to their unusual resilience and strength. To understand how exactly such a variant comes to be, the guild has attempted to sketch out the age progression of Barioth. As a Barioth ages in the hinterlands, it might move towards the unknown territories, where it faces challenges that the species usually cannot cope with. Winds that freeze the flesh, wastes that yield no food, and storms of slashing gales. Who knows what exactly lies beyond the reach of the guild? Barioth that end up here either die or adapt. Nature does not offer much of a choice. Those that do adapt begin changing into a sub-zero predator that puts regular Barioth to shame. The presence of fur begins to increase across the body, likely a reaction to the extremely low temperatures. Before long, the wyvern is covered in a new coat, not unlike the one it wore in its infancy. It is believed that around this time, the most profound change occurs. The cyclone breath of the Barioth cools down even further, both as a result of the ambient temperature and the wyvern becoming more adept at mixing the freezing liquid from its frost sac into its own inhaled breath. The result of this is that the cyclone breath is transformed into a kind of frostbind breath, an icy wave that the Barioth can exhale to turn stretches of the ground around it into treacherous frozen terrain that immobilizes enemies when they step on it. The actual speed and destructive power of the accompanying ice projectiles itself is also greatly enhanced. This adaptation doesn't seem to merely be a question of mastery, however. Frostfang Barioth have been noted to have their frost sacs altered on an anatomical level. How exactly they are modified remains unknown, however, as their altered frost sacs are quite fragile and decompose almost instantly upon death or if removed from the creature's body. From this modified frost breath follow all the other changes to the Frostfang's physique. The fur on the body seems to be especially concentrated in the front, as the largest tufts of it are on the forelegs and the face. This has been interpreted as a way to protect the wyvern from its own breath ability, as the cold air it breathes would likely be detrimental to it too if it was exposed to it for too long. But the most profound effect of the frost breath can be seen in the Frostfang Barioth's tusks. From constant exposure to the breath attacks as they exit the mouth, these tusks are entirely covered in a layer of ice, with jagged icicles and frost hanging off of them at all times. This reinforces the tusks, but also seems to cause the wyvern a degree of discomfort. Frostfang Barioth have been seen scrubbing the frost off of their tusks on occasion. Behaviorally, Frostfang Barioth act much the same as younger individuals, being generally more aggressive and battle-hardened. Instead of relying on their tusks immediately, Frostfangs are known to prioritize immobilizing enemies with their breath before attempting a killing blow, a prudence likely born from years of experience. Analysis of those same tusks has however suggested an alternative hunting strategy as well. They seem to be slightly altered in shape to allow for the scraping of frozen meat, probably to remove it from old ice-bound cadavers. This has led to the belief that while Frostfang Barioth remain top predators, they also specialize in a little bit of scavenging. No meal can go to waste in the unknown tundras of the New World, after all. Barioth have, in the many years since their discovery, remained a fascinating topic of research. Insights into the New World populations and discoveries such as the Frostfang Barioth continue to dazzle scholars and hunters alike. But while many hypotheses and rumors about this monster species have been followed up on and researched, there is a streak of sightings that to this day have not been fully integrated into the Guild's scientific network. Shortly after the Barioth was initially discovered, guardsmen stationed within other Guild territories reported having seen a similar creature during their patrol. The problem was that those guardsmen were stationed in the Sandy Plains, a hot, arid place inhabited by desert creatures. A Barioth living in these conditions would be unthinkable. The Guild, however, did its due diligence and began investigating these sightings as well, eventually leading to a startling discovery. There was, in fact, a Barioth subspecies that had adapted to living in the deserts, a monster classified under the name Sand Barioth. Seen from afar, this subspecies broadly resembles the common species in shape, but not in color. The armor shell of a Sand Barioth is orange and brown, and covered in large patches of hardened sand. Notably, however, the face and forelegs display striking splashes of red. The tusks are thicker but dull in color. Differences like these were easy to spot immediately. What was much harder was to explain them and understand how this creature thrives in the desert. Research first turned to the altered shell, focusing especially on the red markings. Analysis of samples recovered by hunters revealed a disturbing truth. These red markings are in fact the result of constant exposure to blood, which is spread onto these areas and left to dry and fuse with the outer shell. For some reason, Sand Barioth splash their faces and arms with the blood of their prey while feeding, and observations of the monster confirmed this to be a regular activity. While this grisly behavior seemed initially quite bizarre, some have suggested that the Sand Barioth does this to protect sensitive areas from the UV radiation coming from the desert sun. According to this hypothesis, Sand Barioth use the blood of their enemies as a sort of gory sunscreen. Samples from other parts of the shell have also suggested that blood is used in lesser quantities to adhere sand to the armor. But perhaps the most significant discovery about the Sand Barioth came in the form of its breath. Common Barioth are so dependent on their cyclone breath and its freezing property. So how would a desert-dwelling Barioth make use of it? Sand Barioth do in fact still spit out projectiles that create whirlwinds, but do so without the presence of any ice or frost. To understand how this works, researchers had to look inside of the Sand Barioth's body. The organ that was once a frost sac in common Barioth is notably altered in Sand Barioth, being instead a wide membranous structure called a rugged pleura. This organ seems to primarily be there to filter out sand from the air the wyvern breathes. But it appears to maintain some of the functions of a frost sac. While it does not produce freezing liquids, the rugged pleura does have the ability to generate cold air and funnel it into the Sand Barioth's throat. The wyvern in turn can weaponize this property. By spewing out blasts of this cold air into the hot desert around it, the Sand Barioth can force a sudden temperature gradient that creates a swirling updraft, functionally creating a small tornado that picks up surrounding sands and turns into a sand cyclone. Using this ability, a Sand Barioth can both incapacitate prey by trapping them in this rough sandy wind, or it can perform its flashiest maneuver. By jumping into its own whirlwinds and riding the tornado, the Sand Barioth can quickly accelerate its body in midair before flying out of the cyclone at an extreme speed. A powerful move that allows it to quickly close distances and overwhelm prey. This is, however, where knowledge about the Sand Barioth abruptly ends. Some further research of the tusks revealed that they are too covered in sand, and are actually a brilliant ultramarine color when polished. But beyond that, insights about this monster slowed to a crawl. After the initial string of sightings, this subspecies has been extremely elusive, being only very rarely seen from a distance. As such, research regarding the Sand Barioth has largely stalled, and we are simply left to wonder what else might lie behind the veil of obscurity. Thank you all so much for watching, as always, and I would like to extend a special thank you to all the people supporting the channel either on Patreon or through YouTube channel memberships. I would like to especially thank Bruggy, Kelly Barnett, Bö, Lieferdienst, Inepts, Raspberry, Kogath, Mr. Gayballs, British Empire, Just a Hunter, Meta Defiance, Resident Necoarch, Autumns, Anjanath Tamer's Ambience, Wandering Soul, Lucana, Uthduna is an Octopus, Chocolate Coat, Precum King, Joey Tribby 58, Admiral Frost, Makamawi, Uriv, Carl the Crab, Christopher Bronson, Harpier, Suddenly, Molly Mockery, Rose, Zyperius Volkvar, Zaffy, Feopuz, Lufish, Morgulblank, Tacti Wolf, Thyla Zero, Jacob Coleman, Hellbug Hunter, Shebo, M1 Have 1 2, Regal Eagle, Wronger 97, Quali, Matt Hat 124, My Name Gone, The Dollarfish, Sheba, Ryan Hook, Varaxus, Thick, Kuroneko, Zion H.V. Hogginson, Alistair in Wonderland, Jacob Denumnut, Soruka, Cernutnut, Rambling Robin, Lexaegis, Hashi, Black Ace 202, Dissy, Hubbo Himbro Mirror, Magenta, Russell, Vulgar Beast, Person 212, Claire Miboon, Oakwood Tree, Mr. Pyramid, Makot 02, Niels Schlatter, Iron Camel, and I'm going to bed. Take care, everyone. Bye bye. See you next time.